I find it really interesting that a film festival wants to know more about another film festival and wants to include the focus on another festival in its own program, which kind of makes sense because it's true that the experimental film festival of KNOKKE-LE-ZOUTE has a legendary status. I will try today to explain you why and how this status was built and on which elements, historical elements or anecdotes it relies.
예, 그래서 이제 우리가 갈 곳은 그저에서 크로케-르-쥬트 크노케-르-쥬트 크노케-르-쥬트라고 불리는 벨기에 도시입니다.
Most of you probably don't know that KNOKKE-LE-ZOUTE is a very bourgeois seaside resort, which has a casino, has beaches, and it has always been extremely expensive. And during the summer of 1949, took place the first edition of the Experimental Film Festival, which was actually a subsection of a bigger festival called Festival du Film et des Beaux-Arts, Festival Mondial du Film et des Beaux-Arts, World Festival of Film and Fine Arts, in which there was this section called Festival du Film Expérimental et Politique.
이 사진은 그 페스티벌에 있었던 카니발 사진이고요. 1949년입니다.
It's really early, actually maybe that is the reason it was surprised, but 1949 was really early to have the first retrospective of avant-garde cinema that was organized, and that was the main thing of that edition. Here is a page of the program of that year, which tried to include everything that was made since the invention of cinema in the field of avant-garde, meaning French films by Germaine Dulac, Louis Buñuel, René Clair, German films from Hans Richter, Walter Rothman, also a Belgian section with Charles de Kreuker, and so on. Apart from this retrospective, there was already competition which included, and it also sounds really early, but films by Kenneth Anger, who was extremely young by the time, and had a prize actually for his film Fireworks, Maya Deren, McLaren. All these people were already included in the program. The festival was organized by the Belgian Cinematheque, and mainly by one person, Jacques Ledoux, who had recently been appointed as its director 1 year earlier, and who remained director of the Cinematheque until his death in 1988. So during 40 years, he worked the Cinematheque and was particularly interested by experimental cinema, and devoted this festival to it. I move already to the next edition. This is a picture of Jacques Ledoux in 1949. Excuse me, before I move to 1958. This is still 1949. Still in 1949, which show the quite conservative context of the festival that year. This is a picture of officials in 1949, church officials that were patronizing the festival. Another priest here. And yeah,
또 다른 성직자 사진입니다.
and a picture of few guests, among which you will recognize on the right Jean Cocteau, and on the left Gérard Philippe, who was an actor. I move already to the next edition, which could only happen 9 years later, that time in Brussels, 1958, in again a weird context, which was the World Fair that took place that year. And it was on the site of the World Fair. And in the broad selection of films that were shown that year, where it's quite amazing for the date, but films that were already pre-underground, so all the names of the underground were almost there, like Stan Van der Beek, Stan Brakhage, Shirley Clarke, Robert Brieux, Kenneth Anger. They all had films already in 1958 showing in the World Fair in Brussels. That was one of the two main trends that were represented that year, but French filmmakers such as Agnès Varda were already anticipating the Nouvelle Vague. Plus, I will tell you other directors like Roman Polanski, Valerian Borovich, Peter Kubelka, Marcel Rotat. Here you have quite a funny picture. It's a still from Adebar by Peter Kubelka, which bears the Expo 58 logo on the right side. So what was interesting in this broad selection is that we see that the definition of experimental cinema was something that was still totally to be made, and that the festival, during its whole existence, contributed to define. The edition of 1958 gave the occasion of the first use of the term underground for defining a certain school in
예, 그리고 이제 그 당시에 프랑스 그 비평가가 말하기를 이 58년에 이 필름 페스티벌이 처음으로 언더그라운드라는 말의 어떤 특정한 사용법을 확립시킨 그런 이 주연 페스티벌이라고 평가했다고 합니다.
Which was this text by Louis Jacobs, Morning for the Experimental Film, published in Film Culture in 1959, which was a report of the 1958 edition of the festival, and has here this sentence that would be one of the first. Both of these first editions were in a way quite unsatisfying for Jacques Ledoux, the organizer, because what he had in mind was to invent a place and a context where he would be able to deploy this fascination for avant-garde in cinema, but also in the other arts, totally. Not inside another context that would be a World Fair or a film festival in all the sense, but just focusing on experiments in the arts. And that's what he would do. And this occasion was given to him by one person who was an important art collector and who was the director, the manager of the Casino of KNOKKE-LE-ZOUTE. So in 1963, the festival goes back and will stay to KNOKKE-LE-ZOUTE. So we have the place and we have the time, which will be the same for the next three editions, 1963, 67, 74. And the time is a very specific time during the year where the casino, there were no tourists. The casino was usually closed. It was between Christmas and New Year's Eve. So between December 25, 1963 and January 1st or 2nd, as you can see on the poster, 1964 was held the next edition of the casino. It might sound surprising or weird for today's touristic standards, but by the time, during that period, KNOKKE-LE-ZOUTE was basically a ghost town. There would be nobody there. The poster you see was designed by Pierre Alechinsky, who was a member of the artist group Cobra, that was based in Copenhagen, Brussels, and Amsterdam. Other artists of the group included Arthur Blanc, for instance. And he designed the poster for every edition of the festival. And that choice was, of course, also proof of the passion for the arts in general of Jacques Ledoux, who created the festival. So during the week in this ghost town, that was basically lost in the fog that year. There was a very thick fog during the whole length of the festival. Experimental proposed hardcore experimental cinema, plus concerts, plus exhibitions, plus discussions on experimentation in the arts. On the film level, the festival would develop these two trends that were already anticipated 5 years earlier in 1958, which were the underground cinema and the Nouvelle Vague. And that was a very violent clash between two visions, two ways of seeing the new cinema. That clash between these two schools, two ways of seeing the new cinema in 1963, was mainly visible in the Flaming Creatures incidents. That document that you're seeing right now is the application form for the film Flaming Creatures, American underground film made by Jack Smith in 1963. That film that you can today watch on YouTube without any censorship or without any advice was then heavily censored in the US, where Jonas Mikas was trying to organize screenings that were all cancelled or forbidden. The film had been sent to Brussels to the selection committee of the festival and was selected by the committee to participate in the competition. Jonas Mikas, who was the founder of the Filmmakers Cooperative in New York and was a critic, he was writing in The Village Voice and Film Culture, of course, and an advocate of the underground cinema cause, was extremely happy of the selection. And I have to add that Jonas Mikas was also part of the competition jury. But another person that plays an important part in this story is Peter Vermeulen. Peter Vermeulen, who was the president of the Belgian Cinematheque, organizer of the festival, but was also the Minister of Justice in Belgium. And seeing the many problems that the film had in the US, the fact that the screenings were cancelled, forbidden, Peter Vermeulen heard about that and was, of course, immediately afraid. But it was in a way too late because the selection had already been announced to Jonas Mikas. Jonas Mikas heard the news before he took the plane for Europe, and he had the time to immediately ask a few filmmakers that also had films selected for the competition to write letters in which they decided to, in case the film Flaming Creatures was not shown in the context of the competition, to withdraw their own film from the competition. Yeah, I will show you a few letters from those filmmakers now. And most of the documents I'm showing to you today, I found them in the archives of the Cinematheque, the Royal Belgian Film Archives. So here is the letter by Gregory Markopoulos, for instance.
예를 들면 그레고리 마르코프로스가 쓴 편지입니다.
By which he invited Mikas to withdraw his film from the competition.
처리하겠다는 편지입니다.
Another one by Stan Hardwick, the letter by Stan Brakhage.
예, 그건 스탠 브래키지의 편지입니다.
That you don't see. And immediately when he arrived in KNOKKE, Mikas decided to not take part to the competition, to resign as a juror for the competition. And beautifully handwritten, this is the letter from Jonas Mikas to Jacques Ledoux, by which he gives him the letters of the filmmakers that I showed you before and gives his own resignation as a juror. The original of the letter is written on a paper in map. And why am I talking for so long about filming creators and all these details is because as soon as Mikas had resigned from the competition jury, he started showing the film everywhere except in the movie theater, in the cinema, because he couldn't. So he organized screenings in his hotel room, in the hotel corridor, in cafes, in KNOKKE-LE-ZOUTE. And for the audience, for the European audience of KNOKKE-LE-ZOUTE in 1963, those were like the first opportunities of discovering a new way of making films, and Film Cultus was a very good example of that. But that's another way of showing and seeing those films. So not only the cinema was different, but the conditions of producing and of showing and seeing them were different. So we can say that those screenings, together with the New American Cinema Tour that BLM Sydney organized in those years, were really the first opportunities for the European audience to get to know that cinema and its conditions. And among the people who saw filming creators in Jonas Mikas, BLM Sydney, and Barbara Robin, hotel rooms, among the people who saw the film were the Nouvelle Vague directors. Jean-Luc Godard was there, Agnès Varda was there, and discovered the film in the hotel room and hated it. But apart from the underground cinema and the Nouvelle Vague, on that same year, 1963, we have, for example, a little film that was made by Henri Chopin, the French sound poet, together with other people. We also have the film that was made by Anthony Bork and William Burroughs, Doors Open Fire. We have also Japanese films by Takahiko Imura, by Sakio Hirata and Kazutomo Fujino.
예, 근데 이제 당시에 미국 언더그라운드 필름하고 웰버거만 있었던 건 아니고, 예를 들어 프랑스 음악가인 아미 슈파의 작품도 있었고, 그 네타니 볼튼과 윌리엄 버러우 작품도 있었고, 예를 들어 타카이코 이무라, 사키오 히라타, 카스토모 후즈노 같은 사람들, 일본 감독들 작품 또한 같이 소개해야 될 것 같습니다.
And I'm sorry that I cannot show you all those films. It could take a day, and that would be wonderful, but we just have 1 hour. Someone who was also there was Peter Kubelka.
예, 당시 거기 있었던 중에는 피터 쿠베카가 있었습니다.
And KNOKKE was the occasion of the historical meeting between Peter Kubelka and Jonas Mikas. And why is it historical? Is because then this very important link between we cannot say Europe and the US, but at least Kubelka and the US scene was made. And after that, it would be an important part of the anthology film archives and develop many projects in Europe. Yeah. I can tell you more names that were not as famous, like Edmond Bernard from Belgium, who made an amazing film that is called Dimanche.
예, 그리고 이제 여러분 잘 모르실 벨기에 사람 이름을 좀 말씀드리면은
From Canada, Claude Jutras, tout grand.
일본 베르나르의 디망시 같은 작품도 있었고, 그다음에 그리고 뭐 캐나다의 클로드 주트라 같은 사람도 있었고요.
And for instance, those two filmmakers were absolutely not avant-garde or not, not Nouvelle Vague, not underground cinema, but were representing lots of ways of experimenting with the film medium and trying new ways. And they showed a very broad selection that the festival was trying to show. But as I said before, the festival had also included concerts and discussion on music. This is a list of people who were part to that program, and the list is quite amazing if you were a bit into music. Here we have composers that were part of the group de recherche musicale created by GARCIA in France, and musique concrète. But we also have examples of the German scene.
예, 여기는 예를 들어 피에르 셰퍼에서 시작된 국제음악에 속하는 되게 유명한 작가들이 있고요. 또 한편으로는 또 독일시에 속한 또한 새로운 작가들이 여기 있습니다.
Let's move already to the next edition, 1967, because this is intended to give you a first overview of what this festival was. 1967 is really the legendary edition of the festival. So what I'm showing to you on the right screen is the poster by Leszczynski for the 1967 edition. See that there were screenings, theater plays, concerts, with Chicago, for instance, an exhibition by Robert Breer of his floats, which were small moving sculptures. Again, discussions on art and cinema and experimentation with the arts. You can see the titles of those discussions in this list here. And 1967 put so many people in touch with each other that it definitely changed the cinema landscape. Especially you have to bear in mind that December 1967 is just a few months before May 68 in France, that it's straight in the middle of a protest and demonstration in the US, in Germany, very strongly also. From a letter to Robert Greer, from Robert Greer to Jacques Ledoux, this is a series of drawings by Robert Greer explaining the floats, which were these small moving sculptures that he had exhibited in Knokke. Let me tell you a few titles of films that were shown that year. Wavelength by Marcus Snow.
예, 이때 사용된 작품 제목을 몇 개 알려드리면은 마이클 스노우의 웨이브렌트가 있고요.
Who get the grand prize that year.
대단하다고 합니다.
Films by Robert Nelson.
로버트 넬슨,
Jerry Alcoot and Yayoi Kusama.
제리 알코트하고 야오이 쿠사마가 있고요.
The Big Shave by Martin Scorsese.
빅 쉐이프, 마틴 스콜세지라고 하는데 빅 쉐이프가 있고요.
Which gives me the opportunity to tell you that many of those films were shot on film stock that was actually given by the organizers to the filmmakers that were asking for it. So you just had to fill a form, let's say, or explain what your project was, and you had like a big chance to get free film stock.
예.
And this was possible because of an agreement between the Cinematheque and ACRA, the film company. And this genius idea of giving film stock to broke and poor filmmakers was of course a stimulation to create experimental films, and also a fantastic way of getting exclusive content for the festival, because of course they would get the premiere of the film. So among the people who got some film stock that way, I said Birgit and Willem Heim, Scorsese, Judd Jacobs for the film that he made with Yayoi Kusama. For Scorsese, who had the prize that year with that film, The Big Shave, Knokke was very important. He wasn't there, he couldn't go there, but it was a moment where he doubted about going on making films, and that was a very important moment in career. Other films that were screened that year include Bolsheviks, the Reagan virus. And it's quite weird in that context, but again, it shows the very broad way in which the word experimental could be understood by the organizers. A film by Koji Wakamatsu, The Embryo. Many young people, hippies among them, visited the festival.
이 젊은 사람들, 그중 많은 사람들이 히피한데 사람들이 이제 페스티벌을 방문했고요.
And I will show you in a minute some film documentation transferred to video that was shot that year, in 1967, and you will see how the festival looked like. Many film students from all over Europe visited the festival.
예, 유럽 전역에 영화학교의 학생들이 왔고요.
And among them was quite an important group of German film students.
예, 그 중에는 독일 이제 영화학 학생들이 만났던 중요한 집단이 있었습니다.
Some of them came from the University of Ulm.
예, 그 중에는 이제 울 대학에서 온 학생들이 있었죠.
And one of those people was Claudia Alemann.
그 중에 클로디아 알레만입니다.
And she shot the images that you will see.
예, 그 사람이 이 이제 여러분이 보실 다큐멘터리를 촬영했습니다.
There was another group of students from Berlin, from the academy that had just been created a few months before. And among those Berlin students were Aaron Farocki, who was to become an important documentary filmmaker and who recently died a month ago. But also Holger Mainz, who was to become a member of the Rote Armee fraction. And they were excited to discover new ways of making cinema, new film forms. They were, for instance, very enthusiastic by the films by Michael Moore, for sure. But on the other hand, they were also very critical
또 반면에
of the other films of the same. And the political situation by the time, it was the Vietnam War.
예, 뭐 사실 당시에 어떤 정치 상황이라는 게 일단 베트남 전쟁이고요.
Demonstrations were organized everywhere, all the time in Germany then.
예, 그 당시에 독일에서는 정말 곳곳에서 시위가 계속해서 진행되고 있었습니다.
And as soon as they arrived to Prague, they realized that hearing the news, also the radio, that they really had to do something there, where they were, in KNOKKE-LE-ZOUTE, in this bourgeois seaside resort, in a casino, and they had to act. They wrote a manifesto. Here is a transcription of this manifesto that you will see in a minute. The students to write on a huge poster. They also distributed these leaflets with the same text. And that text draws a very questionable but very interesting link between the American imperialism in Vietnam, or also in Europe, and what they call the cine underground imperialism. So the imperialism in the arts, at the underground level.